Finding Pluck is the book. It's a coming-of-age novel, and it's the first prize winner of the International William Faulkner Literary Awards for Emerging Writers. The Faulkner Literary Awards has been paying tribute to works of literature for decades and attracts entries from all over the world. Jacksonville Beach author Peter DeFatta joins us now in studio with more about this story.
Good morning, Jessica. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thanks for being here. Can you tell us what inspired your story?
So I got started with this idea about having a student who is in a bad situation at home. His mother's sick. They have financial problems. He comes from a dying small textile town in North Carolina. He needs financial aid in order to go to college. He's accepted to a state university, but he can't afford to go. And so he goes to the counselor at the university. And he's seeing all these scholarships, and none of them apply to him. A lot of them require teaching for 2 years or so. And then the counselor mentions this gay equality scholarship that pays for everything and even supplies a stipend. And he says, And he starts thinking about it. But anyway...
Is the character gay himself?
No, he's not.
Okay.
And the thing of it is, he decides to apply for the scholarship, and he receives it. And immediately, when it's announced at his graduation ceremony, he faces all sorts of intolerance from the rest of the students, even some intolerance from some of the teachers and the principal, too. And worse yet, he awakens the ghost of the long-dead benefactor of the scholarship. So now he has to contend with not only intolerance and prejudice against him, but he also has to contend with a ghost that is haunting him. So anyway, the story came about that way, and it just sort of developed. And the more I got into it, I did more examinations of the culture of prejudice. And one of the things that the character's name is Taylor, that he's required to do is he has to attend LBGT meetings at the university on at least once a month and do reports on it. Or he can also do papers and things like that. And so in the process, he has to do a lot of research. He begins learning about the culture of prejudice. And he learns that it comes through in many ways, and the laws, the religion, and traditions of our society, and also bias and ignorance, all form barriers that have harmed minorities in the past. And a lot of these laws, as well as our traditions, have been formed oftentimes on the basis of religion, and particularly certain interpretations of the Bible. And we have to think back about prejudice in our history. The Bible has been used to justify slavery, and then later Jim Crow laws, and also keeping women in a secondary position. And even today it's still being used to justify denying gays of certain rights and to keep certain discriminatory laws on the books. So I thought it was a good way to kind of address this issue, but the book is not just all heavy social issues either. It's really kind of a fun read where you have an interesting character and who runs into other interesting characters.
Some of whom are dead?
Yeah, well, and the way I dealt with that is that I put flashbacks.
Okay.
So the novel takes place in 1995. That's when this student is going to school. But it also flashes back to 1927,
okay.
which was an age of great turmoil and great change in our country. Women were getting some freedoms for the first time in their life. In 1920, they got the right to vote. So, and of course, there was resistance to all of these things, just like we see a lot of resistance today to a lot of changes, like gay marriage and things like that. So back then, there was people resisting equality for blacks as well as, even women voting. A lot of people just didn't want that to happen because that's not the way it was done. And then, and our beliefs don't coincide with that.
So when you were writing this, why did you choose to have the main character not actually be gay?
Well, the reason was it's always interesting to put a character in a situation where he's not comfortable. There was once a book where a man colored his skin dark and he lived the life of a black man, and it became a pretty famous novel. So putting somebody in a situation that they're not comfortable with, or the old thing of walking in somebody else's shoes always generates a good story, because then you get to see how other people lived and felt.
Are you hoping the reader will sort of imagine themselves walking in someone else's shoes in the same way?
I most certainly do. I think, first of all, hopefully you will identify with the protagonist, which is Taylor, and see that his internal struggles and some of the embarrassments that he's been facing, and identify with it, and then also you go along and listen to what he's learning, what his research teaches him. He grows a lot in the novel. All the characters grow a lot, and I think that's part of the coming-of-age novel. And it's also tied into the title, which is Finding Pluck.
Right.
Pluck is defined as a spirited and determined courage. And what I was trying to say is that in the course of the novel, Taylor in particular finds his spirited and determined courage, and he comes out on the other side a stronger person than at the beginning of the novel. And the other people throughout the novel grew too.
Thank you so much. We've been talking with author Peter DeFatta, Jacksonville Beach author of the novel Finding Pluck.